Alrighty, so this is the second half of your 4.6 notes. We started the other half yesterday, so this will allow you guys to finish those last three problems on the homework. So on the last page of your homework, it starts out, it says an example, it says 6D, it should have been 6C. What happened when we multiplied 6 plus I and 6 minus I? I want you to take a second here and look back to that problem and see how it was a little bit different from the first two that we did. So hopefully what you realized is that our answer ended up being a real number. We basically got rid of all the i's in our problem. So actually, if we take a minute and look, here we got 37 as our answer. The other times we got an imaginary number. So that's what made that problem unique, is that our answer was a real number. And go ahead and copy these down as I go through them. The next part says, why do you think this occurred? Well, if you take a look at how all the i's canceled out, when we FOILed it out, we ended up getting 6i plus a negative 6i. Well, that became 0i, which is just 0. And then I squared, we end up being able to replace with negative 1, which is a real number. So every I went away. And again, I'm just waiting so you have a chance to copy this down into your notes. So here's a definition. It says numbers of the form a plus bi and a minus bi. Basically two imaginary numbers that look almost identical, but one's plus, one's minus. Like up here we had 6 plus I and 6 minus I. There's a special name for numbers like this. Numbers like that, when they're together, are called complex conjugates. Kind of a weird word. C-O-N-J-U-G-A-T-E-S. Why they're special, why they're given a special name, is because their product, which means when you multiply them together, it will always result in a real number. And we're going to use that fact when we're dividing imaginary numbers. So in the next example, it says to divide the complex numbers. And what you're going to do to divide complex numbers, the instruction, is you're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the complex conjugate of what's currently on the bottom, or what you're currently dividing by. Whoop. The reason why we have to do that is because we have an I on the bottom, and remember that the definition of I is a number. It's the square root of negative 1, and we can't have a square root in the bottom of any fraction, so that's why we have to get rid of it. Alrighty, so in example 1, it says 5 plus I divided by 1 minus 2i. So I want you guys to take a minute and think to yourself, what would the complex conjugate be of 1 minus 2i? Whatever you think it is, I want you to write it next to the bottom and the top, because we're going to multiply top and bottom by the complex conjugate of the denominator, so of the bottom part here. So hopefully what you just wrote down was 1 plus 2i. That's the complex conjugate of the bottom. And we're going to have to multiply the entire bottom by that, so you'll notice I put parentheses around both numbers here. And then we have to do the same thing. We multiply the top by 1 plus 2i, so I put parentheses around the top here as well. So what it looks like is that we're going to have to FOIL out the top. So we're going to have to multiply first, outer, inner, last on the top, and do the same thing on the bottom. So I want you guys to take a minute. I've already done it, obviously. So take a minute, and I want you guys to go ahead, I'm covering up the bottom here, multiply out the top and see what you get. Alright, hopefully you got 4 terms. These are the 4 that I got. Now do the same thing on the bottom. Multiply out the 1 minus 2i times the 1 plus 2i. And then in just a minute I'll reveal what I got when I multiplied it out. So there's what I got. I didn't mean to cross those off in the beginning. But we do see that this ends up being positive and negative, so they will cancel. That's why that's marked off. I just did it from last period. Also notice I highlighted I squared because we're going to be able to replace that I squared with -1, which is going to be nice. So on the top, we see we can put those two together, so we can make that 13i, and we can replace that I squared with -1 there and right there, and these two will cancel out. So what we'll get on the top is 5 plus 13i, and then plus 6 times that -1. So I just replaced, here I'll highlight it, that I squared with -1. And doing the same on the bottom would result, since those canceled, with 1 minus, and then 4 times -1. Keep in mind that what we're replacing the I squared with -1, it's being multiplied by the 6, not subtracted. So don't do 6 minus 1, it's 6 times -1. So then that would change into -6 plus 5 makes -1 plus 13i. And on the bottom, sorry, I'm not trying not to reveal the last problem, we have 1, this changes into +4, so 1 plus 4 changes into a 5. And phew, we're finally done. Why we're happy is there's no more I in the denominator. Why do we not want I in the denominator? Well, because I is the square root of -1, and we can never have a square root left in the bottom of a fraction. So I'll give you a minute to be sure you copy that down. And what I'd like you guys to do is I'd like you guys to try the next example on your own. I'm going to leave this answer here for the sub. So once you're done, I want you to come on up and show the sub. Once you've got the right answer, he or she, I don't know who's going to be with you today, is going to put a star in your paper, and that's going to be your signal then to be able to finish the last 3 problems on today's homework, which was 23, 24, and 25. All of these 3 are dividing. So that's exactly what we went over today. I did have one question from yesterday. Some people were asking me, how do we do this problem? So I'm just going to give you kind of a head start or make sure you guys did it correctly. So in this case, keep in mind when you're subtracting everything that's in the parentheses. So the best idea when you're subtracting is to write your problem without parentheses. So it would be I, and then it's going to be -5 since you're subtracting the 5. And it's not going to be plus 6i, it's going to be minus 6i. Because you're subtracting. And now, since there's no more parentheses, we can combine our like terms. So our real part is -5, and our imaginary part is 1i minus 6i. 1 minus 6 is -5. So it would be -5 minus 5i. Okay, there I did number 13 for you. But be sure in your assignment, it should look like this, leave a space, and then you would move on and do the next one, which is number 15. Okay? Remember, when you're done, I want you to turn in your assignment. Even if you don't get done by the end of the period, which really there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to finish, I want you guys to turn it into the basket. All right, have a great day. If you get done early, you can work on Khan Academy, and I'll see you guys all on Monday.